This is my new hotel setup from Virpil. This is the Mongoose 50 and this is the new Alpha stick. And today we're going to go ahead and review this joystick. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another review with Down to Earth Astronomy. So, my new Virpil setup, I've been playing with this for about a month now, and I feel like I've gotten around all the small nooks and crannies and been playing around with the setup and kind of got familiar with the joystick to a degree now where I'm comfortable doing an actual review of it. However, I will be focusing on the joystick itself. The throttle here is not available on the store anymore. So I might do references to it, but I'm not going to do a full review on it. They have a newer model out now. I wasn't too big of a fan of it, so I managed to get one of the original ones before they went out of stock. Before we start, I should say that this is not a sponsored review. I paid full price for this myself. I have not contacted Virpil about doing this review, so this is purely my own thoughts on the product. So this is the Virpil Constellation Alpha, more specifically the right-handed version. It also comes in a left-handed version. And this is fitted to a Virpil Warbird base. Stick and base are sold separately. I want to start by talking about the base. The base here, as it comes out of the box, has a very smooth transition. There's no hard center point on it, meaning if you move the stick, you can see here it will actually sit and bounce around the center quite a bit. There'll be an issue in actual gameplay. But it's just really nice that you have that extra precision in close to the center. The joystick also comes with twist. This is built into the joystick and not the base. So the twist is a feature of the joystick, regardless of what base you put it on. The twist, however, does, as you can see here, just spring to the center. And there is a very hard center on the twist. This is something that was not really an issue for me in the past with other joysticks I've used, but because of that smooth center on the roll and pitch axis, having that hard center on the twist actually felt a little weird. I would actually have liked to seen an option to not have this hard center on the yaw, so that it would feel more natural compared to the two other axes. I should mention that here on the front of the stick there is a small Allen key in here that you can tighten, which will lock down the twist of it. So if you don't want the twist, you can just turn that Allen key and lock it in. I should also say regarding the force, as you're moving the stick around, it does get heavier the further you get out if you're using the default cams that come with it. However, they do supply with the stick additional cams that you can swap out down here in the base that change how much force is applied on the stick as you're moving it out towards the extreme positions. And the ones that comes as the optionals are more designed for space sims, where the force curve is not as aggressive, meaning it's easier to move the stick out to its extreme positions. And they have a very well done video on their homepage showing you exactly how to take this apart, how to swap out the cams to whatever you prefer. But let's go over and let's begin to talk about the trigger here, because this main trigger up here is actually quite interesting. It's actually I think like a 4-stage trigger almost. It has this small lever here that this is its neutral position when it's in here. This is when it's doing nothing. You can flip it forward. That will engage trigger 1 and it will be holding down trigger 1 as long as this is pushed forward. So if you have something where you need to constantly have a trigger pulled down for a very extended period of time, you can just flip that forward and you can use trigger 1. Trigger 2 is activated when you pull in this small lever here until it hits the button underneath. That is trigger 2. Trigger 3 activates as you continue the push, and the small trigger in beneath is pushed in halfway. That is trigger 3. And trigger 4 you get when you do a hard squeeze on it and you click that all the way in. You can, of course, if you don't want to have all those levels in the trigger, you can just push that forward, disregard trigger 1 and trigger 2 and just use trigger 3 and even 4 if you want to have just a normal dual stage trigger. Below that you have a brake lever. This is an axis. This is an analog axis, meaning that it's not just an on-off thing, just like these one up here that are triggers. This is a full-on axis. However, with something like Elite, this can be just put in as a normal trigger if you want to, meaning it will just activate at the halfway point. And of course, you can then go into the configuration software for the stick. If you want to activate earlier, if you want it to be really sensitive, you can just set that halfway point to activate a lot sooner, so that it essentially activates as soon as you pull the trigger. Over here on the side, we have a palm rest, which can be adjusted. Its height can be adjusted with these small screws underneath here. Very good range on it. You can get it down very low at up or very high depending on your hand size. So that would pretty much fit whatever hand size you have. I would have liked to see this being a little bit bigger, I think. In the beginning it did feel a little cramped and it felt like I was constantly like tipping off the edge of it. So seeing that being a little bit bigger would have been nice, I think, or maybe an option to swap it out for a bigger one. But it's not the most complicated part. So like if you have a 3D printer or something, you could probably do something yourself if you wanted to. However, one thing that I would mention around the size of the stick is both because of the tall base I have here and the fact that there's quite a bit of distance from the base of the stick until the actual like part of the joystick you're using is starting. That height here, I can see that becoming an issue. It wasn't too big of an issue. It just took some time for me to get used to that the stick was higher off the table than what I was used to. I am quite tall. I'm like 1.92 meters, which is like 6 feet 3 inches or something. So I'm pretty tall. And it wasn't really a big issue for me having this sitting on a table and then using it just like this. However, if you're shorter, I could see this tall stick just become an issue. Maybe you would begin to like feel like you have to pull your shoulders up around your ears and it could get uncomfortable in long play sessions. So for something like this, I would probably recommend getting some of those desk clamps that the Virpil has, where you can take the base off, like the base plate off the stick, and you can then mount it below your table basically, so you get it down in a more comfortable height for you. Let's move up to the actual buttons here. First of all, scroll wheel with a push underneath. We have 2 4-way hats up here, also with push. However, I noticed when using this that it was almost impossible for me to only activate the sideway movement of the switches without also activating the push functionality on the switch itself. So keep in mind that if you want to both use the push and the side weight hats, it can be quite difficult. And I had a really hard time using the push functionality for something useful. The only way I actually use the push functionality is out here on this side one here. This is a 2-way hat that goes forward and backwards, actually slightly at an angle as you can see. And it also has push. I've been using this so far to swap through my firing groups in Elite Dangerous, and then the push functionality for deploying or retracting hardpoints. However, as I said, there is this issue where when you use the hat switch to cycle through my firing groups in this case, it will sometimes just deploy or retract my weapons because I accidentally got that push functionality activated. So when using the hat switches, I would probably recommend either using them as a normal push button or using the 4-way hat functionality on them. Also on the front of the stick, of course, 2 simple push buttons, one black, one red. Not a whole lot to them. They just push in, they click in, and they activate. Here on the side, we have a small thumbstick. This is an analog thumbstick, meaning again, it is a 2-axis going both up and down, left and right, also with push. This one, however, I did not have any issues using the push functionality separately from the joystick itself. The only other button I haven't covered yet is this small pinky button down here hidden behind the brake lever, as you can see here. If you look at the height of the push button compared to the palm rest, I mean, I do not have small hands. I have pretty big hands. So I feel like I have this is almost as far down as it will go. But still, you can see here that the push button here is actually below the palm rest, at least partly below the palm rest. So it's actually feel like a bit of a reach to get down to actually reach that button sometimes. It is, I mean, if you have decent sized hands, you can definitely get it with your pinky without too much of a problem. But I would have liked to see that being raised up just slightly. It would have put it in, at least for me, in a slightly better position. The final thing I want to mention about the actual physical appearance of the stick is this small, it's like a rubber like gasket kind of thing that goes around with some transparent plastic, I guess. There are LEDs in here behind this black cover that lights up, and you can change the color of these. So there's a little bit of lighting accents. Of course, you can turn it off completely if you want to, but this is all configurable in the software. Now, talking about the software, initially it was quite confusing, but I think it was just simply down to the sheer number of things you can change. I mean, you can pretty much configure anything you want regarding this stick. And of course, the things you would expect, like center dead zones and extreme dead zones. If you don't want it to, if you wanted to hit the maximum before it actually goes all the way to the extreme position, you can do that. And again, these are separate settings. The center and the extreme ones are separate. Of course, sensitivity curves. If you want the joystick to be very sensitive out or here close to the center, you can do that, and then get more extreme reactions as you move out. Then you can sit and you can do that if you want that. And again, there are also calibration tools for it, where you can just simply click one button and then you just sit and move the joystick out to all the extreme positions and press all the buttons, you click apply, and the joystick is calibrated. It's really, really easy to use, once you get used to it, I should say. The final thing I just quickly want to talk about, that is availability. That was one of the things you guys commented on a lot on my unboxing video of this, and that is that it's really difficult to get your hands on. And there's a huge demand for these at the moment, and Virpil, I think, having a hard time keeping up with demand. And that means that the majority of the time it's just out of stock. The way I got my hand on it was I found a way you could sign up for like a notification email whenever it became available. So I just kept an eye on my email, and when I got that email saying this is now in stock, went in and set up an order for it. But that's gonna be it for today. I really hope you enjoy my review here of the Virpil Constellation Alpha. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, I will see you guys in space.